Welcome, everyone. We'll just give it a moment and let everybody get into the webinar. Okay, Amber, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, of course. Hello, welcome everyone to Magnum Learn's third open day session. I'm Amber Terranova, Education Director for Magnum, and I'm here today with Shannon Ganem, the Global Education Director, and Bayram Bayramali, our Magnum Learn Coordinator. And we're so happy that you could join us all for this special event. Before we get started, I'd like to highlight some upcoming programs very quickly. So coming up on Magnum Learn, we have a workshop called How to Be a Working Photographer with Emin and Chloe, and that will take place in 2 sessions in September. And from September 13th through the 17th, we have another round of our online portfolio reviews with a great lineup, and you can find all the information on our website. And we have a special in-person event, Magnum Learn in Paris, with lectures and portfolio reviews by Sabia Semen, Christina DeMiddle, Yael Martinez, and Lorenzo Maloney, and that's from September 18th through the 19th. And we have our individual mentorships, which are ongoing, and all of the information is on our website, so do check it out. Picturing Place, an online workshop with Mark Power. That's October 20th through November 18th. And let us begin our open day. Thanks for being here, Matt and Susan, and our surprise guest, Alessandra. Thanks for popping in. So before we get started, I'd like to highlight, well, I'll mention that today is divided into 2 parts. We'll begin with a conversation between Matt Black and Susan Meiselas, tuning in from their studios, where we'll hear about their creative process and their teaching philosophy, and you'll get a sneak peek of their studios. Then we'll review the nuts and bolts of their upcoming long-term mentorship program. Following Matt and Susan, our current mentees will share their projects made over the course of 7 months with Greg Halpern and Alessandra Sanguinetti in the pilot version of this program. Since it went so well, we decided to continue this one-of-a-kind special offering with another dynamic team of Magnum photographers. And we'll just review some housekeeping with Bai.
Yeah, hello everyone. So please feel free to use the Q&A option, and feel free to use the chat option to share comments throughout the open day. And we will leave some time in the end to answer these questions and ask them to Matt and Susan before moving to the Mentee showcase. Over to you, Amber.
Thanks, Bai. So over the last year, I've been working closely with Matt and Pauline Vermeer, the cultural director, and Melissa Black, Matt's partner, on his current project. And I could see how his experience would translate so well into guiding other photographers working in a similar way. And Matt invited Susan to join, seeing that they both have a similar approach in their thinking about photography's role today. So that's how we ended up here. And I think we should get started. Matt and Susan, hello.
Hello. Thanks, Amber.
Hey,
Yeah.
Ali.
Ali, yes.
Well, we want the wise words of Alessandra, having just had the first year of this experiment. Hopefully she's going to give us some boosted ideas.
Well, no, we just finished the mentorship with Greg. Yeah, it was 6-7 months, right? And what I can say, it was a great experience just having such a wide range of students with very different abilities and very different moments in their career and the work. I mean, Greg and I were really proud of the work they produced. All of them, came with just some vague ideas, and some came with work that was more in progress. Other people came not knowing what they wanted to photograph, what they wanted to focus on. And where it worked really well is that everybody kind of helped each other out. The people with more experience in our class were super valuable to the other ones. And it was a good experience. I think, you have to hear from the mentees, right? I think they made leaps in their work. And I think that was, of course, our guidance, but also the guests that we had were extraordinary. The panelists that came to review the work were also extraordinary, the input. So it was a very dynamic class. And, this one, it's going to have its own shape and form. And whoever gets to be with Susan and Matt is really lucky. So let me hand it over to you, and I'll see you again towards the end when I see the mentees again, because I already miss them a little bit because I got used to seeing them along all these months. So they're kind of like my friends now. So okay, you
So
go
is this-
ahead, and I'll see you towards the end.
Yeah, so this is their first time they're going to be showing the work to total strangers, whoever happens to be on our Zoom call, I guess, right?
Yes,
You're-
it feels a little bit like graduation day, doesn't it, Alessandra?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
It's
Well,
nice.
thank you so much for passing the baton.
of course.
Appreciate it. So we'll see you in a little bit.
Yeah.
I love
Um,
the idea of the baton. It's like a marathon.
Yeah.
The marathon race. Yeah, so I don't know. How do we want to do the next step?
Well, I'd like to know what's consuming your minds these days, what you're both thinking about, working on. Anything you'd like to share about what you're going through in regards to your creative process?
Well, it seems strangely relevant to be sitting in the studio, which of course we're both in different kinds of studios, and we'll share that a little bit. But because COVID has led us here more than we would have imagined, a year and a half ago. So the studio was the base for for me. I don't know, Matt and I have never talked about this. What's great about this idea is that though Matt and I know each other through Magnum, we've never worked together in the field. We only see each other's photographs, and we have no idea how they were made. So hopefully that's what we're going to share with any of you who come along the journey that we're going to be having, getting to know each other. But even when I think about the studio, it's, the studio used to be the base camp, meaning from which I left. And I was always thinking of leaving. My bag was almost always packed, and just a few things changed from one iteration to another over 4 decades now, So sometimes a knapsack and sometimes a roller or whatever it was, always changing bags to figure out what the conditions were that I was going to potentially face, and never knowing what I was going to actually do. And I think one of the things that's interesting about this, and I'm curious to hear Matt talk about, is when something is a project. So that's something we won't talk a lot about this time, but I think it is what we will be talking about over time. And in a way, what is a project for me is when I realize something's dwelling, and it is over time that I want to reflect on it and dig into it differently. So there is something about time that makes what a project is for me, how much I give myself to it. I don't know, Matt, does that sound like you?
Yeah. Another interesting thing I think to talk about, or at least think about, would be the various kind of stages you go through in a project. like the kind of opening stage, and then you discover things, and it's a series of discoveries, really, for me.
Yeah.
That's the fuel in the tank. And that'd be
Yeah.
a really amazing thing to talk about, and some of your experiences with that too, Susan.
Yeah, and what triggers a new stage, you know, the kinds of questions you have, the kind of dead ends you face, the kind of feeling that you need. How do you fertilize yourself? You know, and self-fertilization is a big challenge to sustain, you know, a life. So when I think about projects, I think about life as a project, number one, or maybe it's a series of projects, you know, that you look back on over time again. Or that's right now the state of mind I'm in. When you ask Amber, what are we thinking or doing? I'm kind of like a cook with six parts of my boiling, various things, boiling, simmering, things that I've taken off the stove and I'm putting back on the stove. I'm not even thinking about the oven, but just, you know, all of the fires burning at different kind of intensities, and navigating that, or allowing myself to feel the fracture of that, and the frustration of one leads me back into another, and then I kind of cross migrate and hopefully cross pollinate ideas. Sometimes one project kind of informs how I might do something differently with another. Yeah, so those are some aspects of what project related work involves. And then I don't know for Matt, but I think in a general sense, there are also all these interruptions. So aside from fires burning in different ways, or pots boiling over, or wanting them to boil, you know, there's also the interruptions. Even this is an interruption, right? From what I was thinking about a half hour ago and need to continue to think about. So teaching is one kind of a thread in my life that's been in my life for a very long time, in different iterations, but also, you know, something like a commission or an assignment, or to what extent short-term diversions that can sometimes feel like they are just what they are. They are nothing more than, or they can suddenly open up a door that I never imagined, that takes me down a path that in fact leads me a completely different place. So part of my practice is always anticipating, you know, the possibilities of something moving beyond what I've been either asked to do or self-assigned myself to do. So that's another aspect, I think, of how you live the life of a photographer.
Absolutely.
What about you, Matt? Do you feel
No,
that you
you're
allow
saying-
yourself to be interrupted?
Well, I guess I might push back against that a little bit harder than some. Like for me, it's really important to just kind of fully inhabit what I'm working on. But what you're saying resonates with me, and definitely it's like when those moments of clarity come, it often seems like it is when you've been taken away from something and you're thinking back, and then right, you know, those little kind of breakthrough ideas. I think so. It's a balance, I think, between immersion and separation a little bit, for me.
Exactly.
The separation might be painful, but in the end, it seems like you always end up getting something out of it that's going to inform the other.
Yeah,
So,
though I don't think you always know what that will be. And
Right.
sometimes it's not the immediate return on that, you know, that's where it feels like a deviation or a diversion, as you say. But in fact, it kind of can come back to give you something in time that you don't always know what that will be. I mean, aside from getting paid to do it, you know, if that's what it is. But the question of, you know, your own resourcefulness to sustain yourself without those diversions. I think one thing I think we're going to probably explore, but I think we know we share one DNA of obsession, and immersion is something we both share. You know, we're compelled by, we're fed by, and you know, we may do it differently. Our work will look very different. What launches us might be very different. We're also generationally different. Therefore, there have been different kinds of opportunities we both had. And this generation, or whoever's on this call, since it's a big mystery, and there's, it's just somebody out there. Those are important things to think about too. How nimble photographers have to be in response to a landscape that is constantly changing in order to sustain your practice, be it long-term, how long-term your projects can afford to be. That's another important thing to convey, because I think when people pick up a book or go to an exhibit, they have no idea the commitment of time that's gone into the work before they see what they see. And I hope that that's something we can also, dive into a little bit. Those different forms. I'd love, Matt, to talk about I know you're finding different forms now for this long body of work. And so hearing about that, at which point it felt right to do a book, it'll feel right to do an exhibit, etc. Those are other things I think we can touch on with everyone.
Could now be a good moment to get into that, Matt, and see a little bit of your studio space as well.
But it might line up a little better with the obsession idea, what I plan to show. But yeah, so since we're here, and I think we talked earlier in the week, and Susan remarked upon my copy stand setup here. And I think what I'd like to talk about also conveys potentially the value of sharing your work with others and what that can result in often very simple ways. Just a simple comment from somebody or a simple thought. And what I'd like to talk about is, so over the course of this geography project, which I'm bringing to a close now, I had the idea of trying to expand and do simultaneous projects alongside, or kind of little side projects, I guess. And one of them was, okay, why don't I pick up things in all these various towns I'm visiting across the country? Why don't I look for little objects that I could collect along the way? And I'm photographing, I'm getting into a new trove of these. That's why the copy stand is set up at the moment. Just little bits of papers that I found in a town called Twilight, West Virginia. I went into this, there was an empty church, and all over the floor of the empty church is what turned out to be the archive of the local United Mine Workers Union. And I collected all these papers, and they just became so I'm trying to basically reconstruct the archive of this local branch of the Mine Workers Union in West Virginia through photographing these objects. Now it extends beyond that. So I did a lot of walking for the project. So I'd get to a town, we'd park sometimes over multiple days and just walk and explore. And as I was walking, exploring, I would grab these things and put them in a bag, the location and the date. And over time, like I said, I just started doing it because I thought, it's kind of an interesting idea, but it blossomed for me, in my mind, to be something that started to speak just as photographs speak, in this kind of emblematic, symbolic way. Here's one of my favorite objects. This was in El Paso, Texas. The spoon was stuck in there, and I thought that was amazing. And then I think it's 2 years later, I found another cigarette pack with another utensil stuck in the top in Pennsylvania. And just the idea of somebody, walking with their cigarette and saving that utensil for later just blew my mind.
Fabulous, yeah.
So I would take these things. I have many, many boxes upstairs full of these objects. I would take them here, photograph them on the copy stand. this is a rough example of, it's kind of awkward to show here on Zoom. But this is basically a catalog is kind of where I've started right now, just a catalog of all the objects. About 3,000 total.
Mm.
And then started building these grids. Occasionally using them as a single paired with a notebook entry throughout the various books and publications we're doing around the project. So to me, this is the kind of idea, I think, or the kind of area of thought, I guess, that in exchange like this, a mentorship, or having a community of people to talk to, can be really valuable. Like I wouldn't see an opportunity like this like being something that's going to change somebody's trajectory, right? As a photographer, I figure if somebody's already to the point where they're considering signing up for a class like this, they already know kind of basically who they are as a photographer, what in the world interests them, how they envision their work in the world. But oftentimes what you need is that little expansion, a little nudge to go in a slightly different direction that can lead to something that ends up being, immensely rich for you. So that's what I feel like we're offering here, really. And I think it can be really valuable.
Absolutely.
So.
Fantastic. Yeah, so excited because I've been watching the project from afar, evolving over how long now, Matt? What do you consider the birth of it, the origin moment, the trigger that's led to the journey? Because I know the journey at different junctures.
Yeah. So 2014 really is when I started, but it was just here in California before I started traveling. So from 2014 to 2020.
Yeah, so I think that that's something that we can say to people, that this journey not only is in how many years, but as you were saying about how many stages and iterations and evolutions. And, we intersected with the project when you were working with, MSNBC and going around the whole country and uploading on, and getting interactions from the community in response to the photographs. And then we placed the work on 110th Street in New York through the Magnum Foundation, and then more people responded, and all these layers and layers of invitations to come back and recycle and revisit. And, I think anyone on this call should know, if you hang in with us, it's quite an amazing journey, just the sustaining of the 7-year process and all of its, kind of, I think probably some of it magical and some of it just aesthetic decisions, and some of it about form, how your ideas about form change. Because when I was looking at the interactive website, that seemed incredibly exciting. And I don't know, was that 2016 or 17?
Yeah.
Yeah. People could follow you, anticipate you're coming to the town. I mean, there are wonderful layers of all of this that in some ways will flatten when the object is the object and it's a book. I hope you're going to find other ways to tell the stories, your own recollections, etc.
I think the expansion of that, and how to best utilize these different outputs, I guess, if you think of it in that way, that each one can kind of shape the meaning of what you're doing in sometimes pretty clear ways, sometimes more subtle ways. That's another thing too, that we can definitely be exciting to talk about.
Yeah. So maybe the segue to show a little bit, it's just so funny to see Matt's studio, which is so clean. And so I'm going to show you my studio, which is completely in an opposite state of mind, which is a perfect reflection of my giving you the sense of multiple projects in process, which all of which I'm not going to show, but just to give you a feeling, I feel like my studio is more like an archaeological dig. And so just to give you a teaser, I'm going to try to figure out if I can do this by changing the direction of what you see. Not so much, well, you'll see piles, lots of piles, lots of books, but I'm going to take you to where I was in COVID times. About a year and a half ago, I was still planning an exhibition. So this is a wall that I was working on towards an exhibition, 2 dimensions of which I'll show you up a little closer. So this is the work I did in Nicaragua. It was supposed to be in a show at the CCP. They canceled. I had already started to plan walls, etc. So there are 2 parts to it. One, which is really looking at 40 years later, and I had made photographs of the popular insurrection of Nicaragua in 78. On the left side, you see a photograph, and on the right side, if you can see that, is a more recent picture that I made at the moment of the resistance movement in 2018. So just about exactly 40 years apart. And I started by making these diptychs to just look at what was then and now, so to speak, at the time that I was working on the show. But I kept it up because I never knew if we were going to postpone forever. So barricades, one of the things that was so interesting to me was that the Sandinista stones, which came from Somoza, the dictatorship that was in place when they fought in 78, were the same stones they dug up in 2018 in the same neighborhoods, right? And so in some ways, I discovered the vocabulary had, again, cross-pollinated over decades. So the man on the left, the Sandinista, just with a handkerchief, and then, outside the university, 40 years later, another student, probably same age, not with a pistol, but with a mask. And then, just, I guess, is another pairing. And this becomes important to me. I'll show you in a minute why. But the picture on the left being the painting of the Sandinistas, the myth of the Sandinistas overthrowing, I hope some of you know that history, a Somoza dictatorship supported by the American government for decades. I was there for a year in that transitional process. And then the resistance movement, which is even stronger today, though not able to even be in the streets now. And a lot of irony of history, which we won't go into today, but I felt that this image, the SOS Nicaragua, was the most important image I made in the 2018 period. That was in a way, this segues to a different idea, which is what's known as the Molotov Man. And this was the last photograph. It was made on the last day before Somoza fled the country. So it's been known as the Molotov Man. It took me 10 years to find out what his name was when I went back to make a film called Pictures from Revolution. And there I found out who he was, what had led him to be in that very spot. So I'm very interested in time in relationship to images and what happens to them over time. And this is the picture that probably I've learned the most from. So I'll just give you a sense of, there's a part 2 to the exhibition, which is called The Life of an Image. And very quickly, I learned from seeing what happened to that image. So when I went back a year after the anniversary, I discovered that the matchboxes celebrating the first anniversary were covered with the Molotov Man. Within a local town, he became a hero. He was painted on the walls. So I'm thinking of your objects, Matt, collecting the matchboxes was the first thing I did. Then I started to see walls painted. Within a few years, when the Contra War began, he became a symbol, and the symbol obviously is reversed as an icon. So these are all elements of realizing that this image was having, as I called it then, a life of its own. There are other iterations of that, posters. He was used, so you have to think about this gringa making a picture that just randomly in the middle of an insurrectional moment, that then becomes the poster to mobilize the popular militia to fight against the Contra War, which is supported by the US. That's the kind of complexity I mean about history. And this is the t-shirt that also 40 years later is used by the resistance. They take the same man, the Molotov Man, whose name is Pablo Arauz, and they use him to represent their ongoing struggle. When I did the film in Pictures from Revolution, I also filmed Pablo and his children, and he has a story that is about why he was a revolutionary, and he is still a revolutionary. So there are other pictures that I follow. There's another pairing, for example, the same mask that hid the identities of people who fought against Somoza, used now to protect themselves in the repercussions of protest today. And actually, this goes back to, I was putting up the show at the SF MoMA actually, and I had just come back. So SOS Nicaragua was in my mind in 2018. And I ended up making a postcard because someone sent me a Facebook page. I don't know if you can see this well enough, of the Molotov man and a young rebel throwing a Molotov 40 years later. And I don't know if it's sharp enough to see what it's saying, but he's saying 40 years más. So I made the postcard and added it to the exhibition when I was there, again, so that people left the gallery understanding a moment in time goes on, and in reflection, now I'm putting together a small show of all these objects. This was something like what was up on the wall of the San Francisco MoMA without the t-shirt. And of course, now I have other layers that I'm adding. So, when I say archaeological, I do mean archaeological. I mean, I don't know. I don't think we have time for more, but it just gives you a taste of how I think and what I hope, we're going to be contributing to you. I'm just going to give you not a real tour, but the other project that I'm in the midst of finishing goes back to work I did before I went to Nicaragua, called Carnival Strippers. I'm making a book called The Making Of. That's the contact sheet it came from. And basically, I'm making something out of, contact sheets, color, which isn't known. This is from the original dummy, photographs, transcriptions, many different kinds of layers that I'm trying to share. So again, I think something about going forward and going backward is the dynamic that probably I'll be contributing in some ways. I think that's probably enough. What do you think? You guys, I mean, I did have 2 other projects that were COVID related. I'll just throw them out there because I think they're things I think we could bring into this. One was a curatorial project with my neighborhood called Tar Beach, photographs that people had made in my neighborhood on the rooftops, and I collected with them. So I don't think it's only for me about my photographs. I love discovering photographs other people have made, what they might contribute to the knowledge of a particular place. And, I wanted to say, I think when we were talking about teaching, I think of teaching as an exploration, as much a giving as a taking and a dialogue. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street, if not multiple intersections or roundabouts. Maybe that's even a better metaphor. But when I did begin in a public school classroom, and I did do a project that was a collective project called Learn to See. And believe it or not, this was published in '74, and it is being republished now. And one of the earliest, these are all projects that were done with students in classrooms, more thinking about photography as a tool, not so much personal expression, but really a learning tool to think about the world and engage with the world. And that project is surprisingly coming back now after all that time. And simultaneously, I was working in COVID on another version of an updated, in that we live in this 360 world of photography. This is a book that Aperture just published that I finished during COVID, partly because I could stayed still long enough. And that's a project that links student work with artists' inspiration. So the ideas, the fundamental ideas of photography explored through students and artists. And that was, again, it wasn't about my work, but it was really about thinking about what does photography give us? What more can we do? And that's it. That's a quick walk through.
What a treat.
Layers and layers and layers, right? Going backwards and forwards. I don't know. That's what I think we're going to do in this talk, in our talks. I think we're going to be backwards and forwards in time, and hopefully engaging with whatever. Just, I mean, I think, again, back to teaching, Matt and I were talking about it. It's not what we have to teach you. It's hopefully we create enough of a feeling of community, of trust, that you will share with each other. And the more you share with each other and the more you share with us, the more we can give you in response. I think some points we may have similar kind of observations, and sometimes we might not. And we certainly want to invite guests who also complement. I think that was another important idea that Alessandra mentioned, thinking about the guests that we want to invite to expand the horizons of what we might be able to offer.
Absolutely. Thanks, Susan.
Yep, sure.
That was great. We have a lot of questions coming in. I might just fire away. If that's
Go
fine.
ahead. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, question here from Verity. Hi, Susan and Matt. Could you possibly speak about being at your established stage of your career, what your support network is? Do you still share your work with colleagues, friends, industry people while still developing a project? Where do you look to for guidance, if ever, when in the midst of your long-term projects and still finding your narrative?
Well, Matt, you're collaborating with a lot of people. Maybe you should take that one.
Yeah. Well, I think for me personally, just like directly, Magnum has been a huge benefit for me in that way, being able to share my work with Susan and other colleagues there. And oftentimes it's very, like I say, I think sometimes the most valuable things can be something very small, but that can just kind of set you off in a certain direction, just a, with one comment or two. Magnum's been great. Also, those closest to me, my wife, and within my own family, has also been very critical. I think the question included the word industry. I hate that term. I don't even really think of photography in those terms at all. But I have, I guess, benefited from some pretty close relationships with editors, and kind of a trust thing that you build up over time. But that's to me, that's a question of just kind of having the, I guess, the right kind of openness in what you're doing, and having it be like a participant in the world, not having it be something that you hold too close. That for me, I've always felt like what I'm making is a public thing, and it's for a public purpose, for public use. And but I guess realistically that was a process for me. I mean, I felt that way about my work for a long time, but I think overcoming that maybe fear you might have when you're first starting out of kind of putting yourself out there is a critical step. And then, maybe this could be useful in that way. So.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, and I would agree. And the difference between when the work is public and how personal it is at the same time. So, I know that both of us have had our work in various kinds of settings, and it changes, when it's in a magazine, whether or not it's for the magazine or it's just published by a magazine is different, and whether or not it's, the same image might migrate to a museum or to a book setting, and it changes the relationship of who's seeing it and how they're understanding it. So I think those are other aspects that we can look at a little more deeply and imagine, depending on what people are not only making what the work is, but where they envision the work. I mean, I mentioned the public space of 110th because if you know
Yeah.
New York, that's the main transition across East and West Manhattan up in the northern part of the city. And people are on a bus. So they probably saw your photographs maybe longer than, you know, they might have anywhere else. And so that's a kind of wonderful, you know, how to use public space in surprising ways is another aspect of what I think is always interesting. I brought murals of the Nicaraguan photographs back on the 25th anniversary, which I didn't mention, but that led to a little film. And that was fantastic to hear people's reflections on the history they either lived or had heard about. So that led to a different form than I anticipated, but I couldn't resist when the gesture of that intervention opened up a whole nother memory path. So I don't know if that's just a touch on that question. We can take that one much longer in many directions.
Definitely. And that's a good segue into this question. Would love to know more about the goals for the mentorship program. Are there specific milestones or end results that Susan and Matt are helping participants towards?
I don't know. I would say you set your own targets and your own timelines and your own. I think we're there as a sounding board. We're there to encourage you to leap. We're there to, when you fall, help you get back on track, you know. And I think it's not just we, Matt and I, it's whoever, both the guests and also this community that we hope to create. And when I said a community of trust, I think the hardest thing about we all live with as photographers is the aloneness of it. And so without it's becoming lonely, it's creating networks and just exactly what the question earlier asked about, various kinds of communities of trust. And that takes time too. And, you know, a lot of people go to school and they have this great environment, and then they're suddenly on their own and they get stuck. And part of that is rebuilding networks of trust. So, you know, this is only one way to do that can be very, very surprising that you will be in a group of people that you don't know, multi-generational, very different, as they may be at all different stages and interests. We don't even know yet who they will be. But hopefully by the end of it, you'll feel very, very deeply connected to each other's processes and each other, and give each other the support you'll each need in different ways.
Definitely, and I can speak to that. Just wrapping up the pilot version of the long-term mentorship, it was incredible to see how the group really started to count on each other, and now they're planning to stay in touch and continue their critiques with each other. So those bonds do form over time. And then they also not only get the input of the two of you, but they get input from 15 other mentees as well, which is so cool. Yeah. All right. Just going through our questions here. A lot of questions. Okay. How do you archive your digital photochemical photographs, negatives, contact sheets, hard drives, so that you can organize a large body of work to access the photographs within it that you want to pull from it?
Well, that's a great thing to remember. We should talk about, Matt, because we may have different processes. I can just say one quick story. When I joined Magnum, and it was a long time ago, I was, handwriting on the back of my contact sheets, let's say SC1, which meant I'd shot carnival strippers in South Carolina, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when I joined Magnum, I discovered a numbering system that is brilliant. And we're not going to tell you now, you have to join the class, but it is a brilliant numbering system, be it for analog and how it migrates into digital. I think we've thought a lot about that. It's really important, I think, to figure out. And I would say the other thing, another little Magnum story was when I entered, people said, are you going to follow the Kappa or the Cartier-Bresson path to numbering? And I thought, what? I have no idea what they're talking about. I barely knew who either of them were at the time. And the Kappa is project-based, story-based. So you start with a year and then you have numbers of projects and series of work. and each one has a distinct number.
Yeah.
It's probably, you would understand the Cartier-Bresson is you start with 1 and then it's rolled 2 to 1,000 to 2,000, how many rolls of film you shoot. So there are different structures. In his case, he wanted all those contact sheets were just equally numbered in the year. And then he'd start the next year and start at 1 and go all the way up to whatever rolls of film. So that's a really interesting branching of numbering systems that I learned from even to think about. I knew immediately where I belonged because my memory ties into, you know, I like the keyword, you know, I need the place, I may not remember the year, so I need the place, I need the person if I was doing a portrait. So I needed that story structure for my way of working. But Cartier-Bresson was functioning differently, and there are many photographers in Magnum who followed that path. So
I've never heard that before, Susan.
yeah, yeah.
I think I'm kind of doing both, confusingly. But well, for me,
Because of digital, because digital raises a different question, right?
Well, it's also within the Magnum numbering system, my projects take multiple years.
Right.
So you have to link each one of these things throughout the whole, that's a bit of a thing. But, you know, it is really interesting to talk about and to think about. Archiving.
Yeah, archiving and also the analog to digital, how it changes. I mean, I remember, and this is quick because we should touch on other things maybe, but the difference between color numbering digitally, if you follow a story list or you just do the you know, whatever the independent number that's generated by your camera. So that's a whole other aspect of this that of course is different than analog. We can go into that in more detail, I think. I mean, there are photographers like Martin Parr makes a print of every image he makes digitally or analog, every image on a contact sheet. Other people, you know, and we can talk about that, you know, the way you edit on a contact sheet. There's a wonderful book of Magnum contact sheets, which if any of you are on the call and not joining us, you should still get that book because it shows you a complete range of how people think about how they use their contact sheets. It reveals how they shoot, how they think. You know, you'll have a contact sheet of the same exact profile, but just different angles, different lighting, whatever. And then you'll have, you know, just one off in the middle of a contact sheet of an image that's iconic that you will remember forever. And nothing else on the contact sheet even refers to it. So, you know, there's a lot of richness in just looking at contact sheets, I think, when you have them. And we will look at your contact sheets or your digital thumbnails or whatever. We will be editing and talking about sequencing and framing and all of that.
Great. Matt, question for you. Your catalog of American geography is so amazing. I just visited your Munich exhibition. Will you be making a book from this theme?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about
the book is a little bit delayed in terms of the exhibit. The exhibit was produced first and the book is coming out October 5th.
Fantastic.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, so maybe time for one more question, and then we'll just review some nuts and bolts about the mentorship. 1 second. When you start a project, what's your starting point or spark? Do you write down a broad, which may change over time, project, charter, or timeline?
Project charter. That's cool.
I tried to address that by saying, how do you know when you are in a project? I mean, I was trying to show you the difference of a lifetime project that I never would have anticipated when I got on a plane and went to Nicaragua. I had no idea what was going to happen there. I didn't know that I'd stay a year. I didn't know that I'd come back, you know, what is now almost 40 plus years later and continue to be engaged and, you know, even tortured by my distance with it today. So I think what is a project is a thing we should talk more about in depth, you know, what makes a project versus the beginning moment that you recognize something that you want to continue to pursue, the curiosity, the openness, and where it leads you. That's what I think we should be really focused on, rather than worrying about what's the project as a defined fixed
Absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. And what is the, I feel like what it is, it's a question that never answers itself, right? And those are the things, that's the level of complexity, I guess, that can sustain your interest for, in Susan's case, 40 years?
Plus.
40 plus. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my case, shorter, but in my case, it's still, it's embedded in it is these kind of never ending non-resolvables. And using your photography in a conversation with those things. That's to me what it is. It's not, you can call it, I think, whatever you want. You can call it a project, you can call it a dialogue, you can call it a photo essay, you can call it a news story. But the question is those things that you never get to the bottom of.
Yeah, that's
How-
really well said. And I also think that's the danger in thinking that a project has to be something like a fixed form versus the fluidity, which I think we both share and probably enjoy the most. And I'm not sure I start with, I know exactly at what point being engaged in the world, it leads me to an idea about something that I want to then deepen and set my own boundaries around. And boundaries are, helpful to start that immersive digging in and deeper, but they don't necessarily limit me. So boundaries should be seen, even that word isn't quite right. It's something, but it sets some dimensionality to what you imagine. When you start off, and I know we don't have time for this, but I will be asking Matt, when he decided that the 20% was the cutoff point, of what you were where you were gonna go and where you were gonna look. And we haven't even touched on any kind of research. What I had read before I got on the plane to Nicaragua. What did you read that led you to, et cetera, et cetera. So I think these are other layers of what either inform us or inspire us or motivate us. And we can talk about that too.
And we do have one more question, which I think would be worthwhile to address very quickly. What do you look for in photographers who you want to mentor?
Well, we probably already have used some of the words, right, Matt? We've said curiosity, commitment, being compelled towards to explore something, questions, being open to questioning and wanting to share. Those are some of the values. What else, Matt?
Obsession. I liked what you said, Susan, about trust, community of trust. And I think, like this idea of kind of giving, not necessarily within the group of people, but also giving to yourself, to a larger kind of purpose that's bigger really than you are.
That's great. Yeah. And exploring opportunities for that. I mean, I would hope that this would inspire people to think about what they're bringing or giving back to the communities that they may have imaged or had relationships with. And that's what I think Matt's referencing, the bigger. What is the bigger beyond your particular vision, your composition, it's not only, that is only part of the making process, and then where is this work living and what is it giving to the rest of us all? So yeah, well said. Good point. Yeah.
Well, so much. That was highly inspiring.
Okay.
All righty.
Yeah, well, I hope we'll see some of you in
Sign
some
me up.
future. Yeah.
So here's Greg. Hi, Greg.
Hi.
And our
Hey.
mentees are piling into the room. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Matt. I really look forward to
Great.
working with you both on this. And just to say to everyone listening that the scholarship deadline is August 14th and the application deadline is August 25th. So take a look at the link and definitely get your application in soon. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me or anyone else on the team. All right.
Great.
And
So we'll hang around, Amber. We'll hang around.
it's up to you. We're going to jump in now to our showcase of the mentees from Greg and Alessandra's class.
Great.
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Matt. See you soon.
Bye.
Okay. Hi, welcome. It's nice to see your faces again.
Hi.
Starting to miss you all.
Yeah, good to see you guys again.
Hi.
It's our reunion.
So, so we're going to kick off. We have a short time window to get through everyone's presentations, but I just wanted to give the floor to Greg and Alessandra in case you wanted to say a few parting words. This feels a little bit like our graduation day and our first public showcase. If you'd just like to talk about what it was like for you to work with the group over 7 months.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alessandra, if you're.
I actually think it would be most valuable for everybody to hear from the mentees. Sorry, I have an alarm going on. You know, it's been a long, pretty good journey altogether. It's been, you know, it's what I said at the beginning today. It's just been wonderful seeing how everybody's work evolved and changed and got more layered and more focused. But I really want to hear more from the mentees.
Yeah, I would just say one quick thing, just having sort of witnessed the growth that that I saw, you know, in everybody's work over that time period. I'm used to teaching like in person in a university setting where people are sort of taking a lot of other classes and their attention is always torn with other classes. So I'm competing and teaching here. It really felt like people were able to just focus in this really intensive way on their projects. And so the growth that I saw in 7 months here was greater in a lot of cases, most cases, I'd say, than what I see in a university setting. And maybe it was just because you guys were so, you know, you brought so much to your work into the class. So it was super gratifying from my perspective to see that each month we'd meet and see work, and it was really exciting. So that's just one thing I'd say. But I agree with Alessandra. It'd be great to hear from you guys what it was like for you.
I'll take a shot at it, I guess. In a word, it was extraordinary. It was at the beginning, you know, trying to decide whether to do this and could I get in and so forth. It was a leap of blind faith, and you know, would it be worth it? And it was extraordinary. I knew that we would learn a lot from Greg and Alessandra, and you know, my God, we did. Also from lecturers that were brought in and guests. But it was our classmates that were just also extraordinary. And Amber's already mentioned it, but there's a real bond there, I think. And I think we're all determined to try to keep it going as a class with some monthly check-ins or whatever. Hold each other accountable and celebrate the work and pushing each other along and so forth.
Great. Thank you so much, Herman. Maybe what we'll do is just jump into the slideshow, and if there's anything you'd like to add about your experience, you're welcome to during your presentation. So I am going to share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that? All right. So would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, this is Yu. I'm from China, now living in Phoenix, Arizona. The project I'm working on is about the longest river in the Southwest, Gila River. The most different thing of it is it's dry halfway through its journey because of irrigation and drought and the drought of the desert. So since October 2020, I started to going to different locations along the river, trying to capture the moments that people interact with the water and the unique views of the surrounding towns and the rise and falls of the river. The past 7 months, I think I start learn how to to get a clear thought of this project, how to proceed from Greg and Alexandra, and they help me to choose the pictures, editing them, and I'm kind of start getting into the storytelling and documentary photos area. Yeah, most of the pictures shown here is taken during the past 7 months during the class.
Yeah, that is worth mentioning that everyone in this mentorship made work during the pandemic. Great. Anything else you'd like to add, you, before we move on?
I think no. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Marius.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Marius, and I'm from Romania. I was born in Romania, and I lived here until I was 11 years old. And now I'm based in Spain. I studied photography in Madrid, but I like to do my projects mostly in Romania. I'm interested in working with my family, and I like to insist on those conflict and tensions that have appeared between us since I moved to another country. And the title of the project is Where Dogs Don't Bark, and is a project about my uncle and his problem with alcohol and the relationship between him and my grandmother. And this is a very personal project, and due to the relationship I've had with alcohol over many years, I've hardly had an emotional connection with my uncle. And I left Romania when I was 11 years old, and every time I came back, I tried to avoid meeting him when he was drunk. And my uncle is a person who depends on my grandmother for practically everything. My grandmother is in charge of the housework. She prepares the food, and she's also the economic support of the house thanks to her pension. And the project is also about how my grandmother has treated over many years to save my uncle from alcoholism using different rituals, enchantments, and magic. And yeah, the project is about them, but also about me and my relationship with them, my relationship with alcoholism. And yeah, and I started during this long-term mentorship, this dummy photo book, and Alessandra and Greg helped me a lot to put together everything because I started the project before this long-term mentorship, but at the beginning I was very confused with everything because I had like a lot of pictures and different elements, text, all the images, and they helped me with the editing process, and it was just amazing to be part of this long-term mentorship. And also very special because I spent 2 months in Romania taking the picture, and it was just amazing to share the pictures with them while I was here in Romania.
Thank you, Marius.
Thank you, Amber.
Do you want to mention that your work will be exhibited in a couple of months?
Yeah, I'm currently working on an exhibition in Madrid. This year, I was nominated by Photospaña to be part of Futures Photography. It's like a European platform, and the opening is in September in Madrid. And I'm still working on the photo book. This is like the beginning of the process of making the book. So I'm still, actually, I'm currently in Romania. I'm still working for the project. So I'm at the beginning of making the book. But I think Greg and Alessandra helped me to construct the beginning of the project, and now I feel like more comfortable working.
That's great. Good. I look forward to seeing it. Okay, thanks, Marius. Federico.
Hi, my name is Federico Quintana. I'm half Argentinian, half Italian. And I started this project with the idea to do something abroad in South America, but the pandemic locked me down. And I felt extremely challenged by the situation. So I wanted to say something about the pandemic and the situation. And I noticed that artists were highly affected by that. So I grabbed a friend of mine and decided to work with him in depth, slowly developing a process that is very different to me because I come from editorial and photojournalist background. So this actually was something I needed to do and wanted to do, is slow down my photography and approach it with this concept to get closer to the world of art. As Susan was saying earlier, I think there are a lot of changes in photography. And so in order to understand myself and what I could do, I tried to make it as difficult as I could to myself. And I really don't think I could have done this work if it hadn't been for the support of the mentorship, especially Alessandra and Greg, who really guided me through it in every possible way. And I don't think I would have dared to have gone this way by myself. So it was an extreme test, and it really taught me a lot about myself and what I could do if I wanted to. And now I just have to digest this for a little bit and see how I can apply it to my future. In other words, it's still very difficult for me to talk about my own photography, so I'll just leave it at that. This is a musician that was going through really a hard time through the pandemic, and was sick at the same time, and took measures in his life that were rather extreme. And I tried to document it as best I could, extrapolate his emotions, his feelings, the various aspects of how the pandemic were affecting him, as in depth as I could.
Anything else you'd like to add, Federico?
I really would like to thank the group, Alessandra, Amber, everybody. It was just an incredible experience. I think it'll stay with me for a very, very long time.
Thank you.
All of you.
Okay, Nang, are you with us?
Yes, hi. Hello, everyone. Okay, my name is Puvadon. I am based in Bangkok. I'm Thai. And I used to work in corporate for a number of years. And I decided to leave my career to pursue my passion in photography in 2016. And this is the project that I'm shooting on and off since then. And I'm bringing this work into this class to explore further. How can I expand the work and learn from the specialists who give me guidance and bring the work to the next level. So this work I shot in Pattaya, which is a town in Thailand that used to be a very small fishing village on the East Coast and 2 hours from Bangkok. And the place was transformed into a tourist destination in 1959 when a large group of American servicemen landed there during the Vietnam War. And since then, the town has changed a lot and rapidly grown into a popular tourist destination, where there's a lot of culture and nightlife experience to offer. In this project that I call Nothing But a Dream, I wander across this town in Pattaya and observing and contemplating on multiple aspects of the ongoing changes that happen through the ups and downs of the economic change and the tourism industry. And my goal is, I want to use my camera, my photography to explore and interrogate the overlapping territory between fiction and reality, of everyday life that we've seen, and try to comprehend the undeniable change that happened in our life. It's a little bit like meditating to this resort town and facing with, the sight of reality or not reality, that kind of drifting around town like that.
Thank you so much, Nang.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave.
Hi. So I'm Dave Lane. I'm based in Glasgow, Scotland. And my project is called Once Bitten. And it's about my relationship with my partner, Henrietta, who I met in the midst of the pandemic towards the end of summer 2020. And it's about transitioning between the experience of, I suppose, having lived alone for a long time and throughout the first lockdown of the pandemic, which was a really kind of isolating thing in obvious ways that you'd expect. And then in a really sudden way, finding myself kind of involved in an incredibly intimate thing. And I suppose the distinction between those two extremes made me a little obsessed about the theme of intimacy for a while. And I just would endlessly think about what it means to be intimate with another person and think about physical closeness and emotional closeness and things like that. So yeah, through this project, really, I guess, at least initially, I was trying to document that intimacy and my experience of it, and and to document the early stages of the relationship as well, which is always a really exciting thing. But there was something very unusual about it in this case, our kind of meeting in this chance way in the midst of the pandemic, in a very kind of brief window of restrictions easing in the UK, where you could go out and, you know, have the opportunity to meet people, and that opportunity kind of ceased very soon after we did meet. And yeah, it really was one of those instances where you think, you know, a week later or so, this wouldn't have been possible. So it took on a kind of special resonance because of that, I think. But yeah, as it expands, and this is kind of really going to be a very, very long-term project for me. I think it's just starting to dawn on me how long-term it's going to be. Initially, I thought maybe this is the first year that I've known Henrietta, but that's next month, and I'm still not done. So I think I'm just excited to see how it's going to evolve over time and grow. And I've had just an endless number of gems of wisdom from Greg and Alessandra in terms of what directions to take it in and what to be open to. And there were so many firsts for me on this project that I think, things that wouldn't really have ever entered my mind if it weren't for conversations that I'd had with Greg and Alessandra, and things that they'd encouraged, and maybe usefully discouraged at times as well. It was, the crits that we had, so many funny instances of, feeling like I had a real gem from a role, and then feeling like, oh, maybe they didn't share that view, and that was really useful. But the opposite was true also. Like, I had so many B-rolls that I thought were just, destined to gather digital dust on a hard drive forever, were things that they thought, oh no, you should hang on to this one and look at it in a different light because there's something there. So yeah, I think that's definitely one thing just right off the top of my head that I would say I've learned from them, is kind of made me reassess what I feel like has value in photography in a lot of ways. The things that I would spend longer looking at, thinking about more, and the things that I would maybe be slightly more dismissive of.
Thank you so much, Dave. And is that Henrietta joining?
Yeah.
Nice to meet
So nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay, Herman.
Thanks, Amber. My name is Herman Dial. I live in Austin, Texas. I'm somewhat new to photography, and this long-term mentorship allowed me the opportunity to really apply myself in a deliberate and disciplined way. I thought of the class as offering me the chance to try things, hone my skills, gain some skills, and also gain a level of comfort and confidence and begin to find my own voice. The work you see is a selection centered on the city of San Antonio, where I was born and where my family has deep roots. My particular photographic interests are evolving, but I think stated most broadly, I'm interested in the contemporary social and built environment, including such things as vernacular architecture, how streets and neighborhoods change over generations, why some places decay while others age gracefully, and so forth. From here, I intend to broaden the geographic scope of the work while hopefully continuing to sharpen its focus. I've just been so fortunate to be a part of this. It's I said it a few minutes ago, but it's just such a wonderful group, and I'm really kind of sad to see it end. But anyway, Thanks to you all.
It's fun to, oh, sorry, to see some new images in here, Herman. Thank you, Herman.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Catherine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Simmons Booker. It's a pleasure to be here and share my work. And hi to all of my fellow mentees, and Alessandra and Greg and Amber. I am based in Oakland, California, and the project that is being shown today and I'm sharing with you and that I worked on in the past 7 months is one that is about my family and our home and the land that we all live on. And I live with 9 other people, my parents, my 4 siblings, my brother-in-law, and my nephew. And I've been photographing my family for the past 6 years since I graduated. It really started when I was in college at California College of the Arts. And after I left college, I continued to photograph them. And it got to a point, as some of the other mentees stated, where I had all of these images, but I didn't know what to do with them, what they all meant, what the project was. And when I saw there was an opportunity to work with 2 photographers that I greatly admire and who have influenced my work, I knew that I needed to apply and do it for multiple reasons of not just that, but also just wanting to be back in that space of talking about art and talking about photography and being in a community. And so I think that if you have that drive and that desire, the mentorship program is a wonderful opportunity to really focus and hone in on the work. And I think it's also good to think about, hopefully, that if you're going to choose the mentorship with Susan and Matt, that you connect with their work or relate to them, because I think that in my personal experience, it really made me show up and it really challenged me because, you know, you are having a community and support, but you also have to have that self-direction and be shooting and be looking at your work and being ready to show up with all that you got. And so that was super helpful to that. I wanted to be challenged and I wanted to show my best foot forward. And I really have been photographing kind of on autopilot, and then being in this class really just kind of shook up my work. And one of the things that I did is I put myself back in front of the camera. I started using flash again, and it was a space where I felt like I could be experimental and know that I could then do these images that felt different than what I was normally doing, how I was normally shooting, and then I could get immediate feedback on it. That helped me kept pushing it and pushing and pushing, and it really just made my project more complex and more layered. And actually, I feel like now I have a project, like within all of these images of my family, there's now this little space of like what this is, currently being called The Deer Lay Down. And it also helped me really feel like I have ownership and authority as an artist and what I want to do and which direction I want to go in. And that was also supported by having the experts look at our work at the end and hearing their feedback. And now I'm hoping to apply to grad school. And so the past 7 months have really felt pivotal in just my career and journey as a photographer. And I feel really, really blessed and honored to have been a part of this experiment in this group. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great experiment. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, Is Trent here with us? Okay. Yes, here's Trent.
Hello, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, do you just want me to quickly intro my project and then speak about the class? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, you can talk about whatever you'd like.
Okay. So I'm Trent Munson. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. I began this project at the start of this mentorship. So I never really put into I've never really put any time into any personal works that I truly cared about, and if I did, it was a little bit more immature. So I guess I've been looking for a mentor for a long time, and when I saw this, it kind of felt like the perfect opportunity to apply, and I got in. So this project is about my brother. He committed suicide in 2014, and he left behind a 1-year-old daughter at the time, and me, who was 14. So I try to use this to explore the dark sides of family and how past traumas manifest themselves back into reality. This was, this started out with a couple images that I came to them with, and I didn't really know where I was going. And I think that the main thing it gave me was just confidence to keep going. I didn't have a lot of confidence in my own work, being that this is my first time giving a project that I had some emotion invested into a shot. So just to be able to bring it to someone that I know and can trust was extremely helpful. And for them to just kind of keep pushing me to try new things and be open-minded and kind of guide me down the right path was everything I needed. So I feel like, after this, I'm kind of being put onto the right track to finish this project and to continue with other personal projects and have a better frame of mind for approaching them.
And Trent, did you mention that you're currently studying photography?
Yeah, I'm studying at Georgia State. I'm lightly taking their classes, so I'm going to be entering my senior year, and hopefully, maybe I'm considering grad school, but I guess we'll see where it goes.
Thanks, Trent.
Thank you, guys.
Is Phil with us?
No, Amber, he's not.
Okay. Let me see if I can do this. I'll read his project statement. Okay. Just 1 second. Okay. So I'm going to read Phil's project statement. The smell of the man on the bus was unbearable. The driver, hardened to the situation, came to throw him out and sprayed the cabin with a powerful disinfectant. The stench subsisted and kept the memory of this vagabond of New York alive. This man had awakened something in me. I waited many years before I had the time. That day came and I set out to find him in the virus-emptied city. We were so afraid then. This haggard population, in its recesses, in its tunnels, how could it? The coin was no longer handed. We threw it and ran. In spite of this sun shone, the city gleamed, and few of us cared. All these refugees, Syrians, Afghans, Africans, all these Frenchmen, these people had lived a different life before, had loved, worked, and fought. Pride remains, few beggars, not so many wrecks. Winter is cruel. Summer is too. Meager possessions hidden away to protect them from envious and poorer than us. And this desire to talk, to share, I found it here. Aussie, an old blue beret, collects the copper from massive rolls of electric wires. Marie does her coloring in like a child, concentrating hard. Marie Evelyn worries about her leg, but walks every day from the Hotel de Ville to the Invalids. And my friend is Kalaman. He camps in the Champs-Élysées gardens, knows Annie Leibovitz, smoked weed as a child, loves rock band Deep Purple, drinks red wine, and asks me not to leave him alone, but to stay and chat. So these were all taken in Paris during the lockdown. And just a reminder to our audience, if you'd like to leave any comments in the chat, please feel free. Okay, bravo, Phil. Brian.
Everyone, I'm Brian Yanez. I'm originally from a rural town in Northern California and now reside in New York. Just personally, I was a relatively new photographer prior to taking this course, hadn't received any formal instruction, and it was really kind of up against the point where I was feeling I was starting to hit the limits of where just, really just being a self-learner was getting to the point where I felt like I needed some real feedback. So happened to see this course come available. I was already a huge fan of Greg and Alessandra's work. So took a little bit of a leap of faith, given that I'd never gotten any formal instruction before and didn't really know what to expect. And I really can't say enough of I think the two things I would highlight most of what I really got out of this and what I enjoyed most of it was, I thought the format was absolutely perfect for someone like myself who really wanted the space and the duration of it being over a 6-7 month period really gave me the chance to really dig in and push myself during the periods between the coursework, because I think it is like anything, you're going to get into it what you put out. Obviously you're going to get a lot of support, but it really is what you make of it, and I think most of us did a great job of doing that. And then on top of that, to have the expertise of Greg and Alessandra to really, analogy I give is I kind of was the one putting the gas to the pedal. They really helped steer the car and help me make sure I was heading in the right direction and giving me critical feedback on things that were working and things that weren't working, as I really just continue to push it and try to find my own voice as a photographer. So the project itself, still in its early phases, but I was inspired by a series of books that I read during the pandemic that really at their core, they all speak to that our differences are really the essence of what unites us. So so the work that I've really been focusing on is really just engaging with others and recognizing the universal qualities we all share, such as dignity, resilience, and individual passions and concerns. So yeah, like I said, I think I grew a lot during this course, and I really can't recommend it enough. And I look forward to also continuing the relationships that I've been able to build with other members of the work group.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see who's next. Carl. Are you
Hey there, I am.
Great.
Hi, I'm Carl Petska. I'm in San Francisco, and I started this project a little over a year ago, and it kind of grew out of the process of my daughter becoming a teenager. And it was such a privilege with this project to be in the presence and the company of all my fellow mentees, for sure. The amount of feedback that we were able to give each other on a weekly, monthly basis was huge. And I think it made a giant difference in terms of how our work, all of our work grew, especially mine with my daughter, and watching her grow at the same time. And a project that I initially thought was maybe only going to be a year long because she was turning 13, realized into this mentorship that it's going to be her entire adolescent period, which is really fabulous because I get to watch her change and grow, and myself included. And so we were a lucky group to have Greg and Alessandra as our experts here, and it's really nice to see all the growth of everybody and their work. It's a slightly new edit for me too. It's probably one of the first projects I've ever done that's been this personal also. And I think being in the group that we're in, we were all able to show that side of ourselves that maybe we wouldn't normally do. And that was huge also for the mentorship. And it really gives you a chance to open up and dive into not just a project, but dive into your own personal relationships with whichever project you happen to be working on. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Carl.
Okay, hello, I'm Angie Terrell and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. And my project In the Sun, that is Young Ones Only, came about primarily because of the pandemic. I think that's a theme here, of course, as we all got started in January. My daughter is an only child, and prior to the pandemic, a lot of the kids on our street, as well as my daughter, had their own lives, I guess you could say. Their families, would put them into gymnastics or music lessons or something, and everyone had their own schedule. And while they knew each other, really during the pandemic, they came to be their own community, I guess you could say, growing up together during that very, very difficult time. Where there was virtual schooling and we were all separated from our extended families. People were losing jobs and it was very difficult. And yet, because they're kids and they don't really know any other way, they created this really magical childhood that I think I had and some of the other mentees had growing up, and we wished that for our children, but it's harder to do in this day and age. But ironically, during lockdown, these kids really were able to do that. So not only did they form friendships, long-lasting friendships, but they also got to do things that they wouldn't maybe normally have done right on our street here. And so, the best thing about this class for me was acknowledging that there's stories to be told right out your front door. That's really tough to acknowledge and really dig into. And it was really amazing to be able to do that during this class with Greg and Alessandra helping guide that and really helping us and helping me go much deeper on some of this work. And this like many of my other mentees, fellow mentees, this is going to be a long-term thing, of course, for me. I think there's many stories to be told on just my street in Atlanta. It's a very unique neighborhood, but there's many stories to be told. And so I think this is one chapter of that. And yeah, I think it's just such a unique opportunity for these kids who were able to explore and find daily wonders and just, run from yard to yard and play together. And so, yeah, thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Angie. Sam, are you?
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Hello, my name is Sam Feingold. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but I grew up in Fox Point, Wisconsin. And my work in photography engages with themes of identity, race, and belonging. And I often try to situate those elements within the context of where I live and where I grew up. So I was born in Korea, but I was adopted when I was 6 months old. So I've lived in the Midwest for the majority of my life, the Midwest in the United States. And so the work that I'm sharing here today is part of an ongoing project, which I'm temporarily calling One Wish a Year. And so this project started as a way for me to grapple with the feelings of grief, loss, and sometimes even anger that I experienced as a child growing up, trying to understand what it meant to be an adoptee. And so I started by taking these self-portraits to kind of parse through these emotions. And, these emotions are something that, I've been reluctant to share with the rest of the world, including my family. And so, I was taking these self-portraits and also taking pictures of my family, and photography in this project really became an entry point in which I was kind of combining these two worlds and kind of introducing my family into the experiences and reflections that I'm now making on some of the struggles that I had around my identity as an adoptee, and bringing them into that world and kind of inviting them to engage with me on it. And so that's where I kind of see my current project, what it's evolved into today. And, like I said, it's an ongoing project. So I'm excited to continue working on it and see how it evolves. The past 7 months in this mentorship program have been truly incredible. I'm so very grateful to Alessandra, Greg, and Amber for their guidance and support over the last 7 months. So, yeah. One thing I would say around like a real positive around the mentorship program as well is just like it's been really great to have people challenge me and have my mentees and mentors challenge me and encourage me to try new things and not be afraid to fail. And I think that's really important as an artist to kind of build that community around yourself with with people whom you get to know and trust, and to kind of make you feel like you're not, doing this alone, by yourself. And that's been really important for me, and something that's meant a lot to me over these past 7 months. So I'm excited to continue meeting with the rest of the group here in the coming months and see how everyone's work develops.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, this is Chris Davidson's, and I will read her artist statement. She's not able to make it tonight. This is a storytelling project. It's called The American Imagination. The idea of belonging, the desire for it, the thread of it, weaves its way into every American story ever told. In her brief history under the name America, this country has wrestled with every form and manifestation of belonging. How to belong to a new land, how to stake a claim of ownership of said land, how to belong to oneself, how to belong to others, either by brute force, subtle coercion, or by open-hearted, willing choice. As an immigrant still sorting out how I belong here, I am drawn to the unease within America's still young storytelling tradition. In the last couple of years, I have been using regional myths, tall tales, and legends as entry points to explore how fantastical storytelling gives shape to both individual and national identity. The landscape becomes a stage for overlapping and colliding stories of the past, present and future to play out, with individuals assuming and discarding various aspects of identity along the way. A selection of images from several regional chapters are included in this presentation. A revisiting of the UFO that allegedly crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, 2 years after the detonation of the world's first atomic bomb in the area. An inquiry into the maze of JFK's assassination conspiracy theories, a retracing of the origins of the Rougarou, the Louisiana swamp monster, born out of the convergences of a watery landscape, global religions, desire, and guilt. A Navajo origin story. And in the Georgia Sea Islands, a search for elusive traces of the flying Africans, a myth about would-be slaves growing wings and flying away from a life of bondage. It is a story laid on top of a mass drowning, a real event that occurred in 1803. We are made up of blood, bones, and stories. Our stories are very much alive, a form of cultural DNA passed from one generation to the next. Okay, that is the end. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Yep, we have some nice comments in the chat. I guess this is our final farewell for now. I'm sure I'll be seeing some of you. And one thing I forgot to mention to all of our participants is that we wrapped up the long-term mentorship with a pitching panel. And so all of the mentees presented their work to a panel of experts who then provided fresh feedback, which was a really great experience, I think, for everyone. So they were able to hear some new insight after hearing from the same group for 7 months. And so we just wrapped that. And we'll be doing the same in the next long-term mentorship. Hi, Shannon.
I just wanted to pop back in and say a huge congratulations to everyone. That was incredible, really incredible. And thank you to you, Amber, and to Greg and Alessandra. And yeah, I just wanted to say hello and can't wait to see what comes next for all of you. And I'm really happy that you're all going to stay in touch. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anne.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap then for us. So thank you all for attending and for your thoughtful comments and questions. And please contact us if you have any questions. And I look forward to staying in touch with you all. Thank you so much. It's been a really great experience for me as well.
Congratulations,
Amber.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Anne.
Amber. Thank you very much, Amber.
You're most welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hopefully
Bye,
we'll see
guys.
you at
Bye.
Paris Photo.
Hope to see you soon.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. All the best.
Bye.
You too.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.